Welcome to Rice TVX. You have just tuned in for the latest transmission of Stranger Than Fiction. On today's show, I am joined by Derrick Broze, who is an activist, journalist, and an author. He is also the founder of the Conscience Resistance Network, the Houston Free Thinkers, and one of the co-founders of freedomcells.org. I wanted to get to know Derrick a little bit better today and also talk all things freedom. But before we get into it, if this just happens to be your first time ever watching any of my videos, I do encourage you to check out and explore my channel. Make sure you're subscribed, smash that like button, and hit that notification bell so you can stay up to date with my videos as they come out. I encourage everyone to check out my Patreon channel where I post up exclusive content. You get early access to videos, and it's a way to support the channel directly. Be sure you're following me on Library and Odyssey, where I have backups of all of my videos and post up extra content. And check out Rice Radio, that is hosted on anchor.fm. It's available on every major podcasting platform at Rice Radio, with new episodes coming out weekly. And in case you don't know, I am partnered up with Money Metals Exchange. And that means you can get a free half ounce of silver. All you need to do is go to moneymetals.com, be a first-time buyer, purchase $100 or more, use the promo code RICE, R-I-C-E, you get a free half ounce of silver, and it's an additional way to support the channel as well. I'm going to have links down below for everything I just mentioned, as well as everything we talk about on today's show. All right, ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned, joining me on today's episode of Stranger Than Fiction is Derrick Broze. He is an activist, a journalist, and an author. He's much more. I want to give him an opportunity to explain a little bit. I met him a couple of years ago in Philadelphia at Anarchidelphia. That's when we had our first in real life meeting. And I was really impressed with a lot of things he was doing at the time. I believe you were running for mayor of Houston. So you're a journalist, a co-host of Free Thinker Radio on 90.1 Houston. You're an author, a public speaker, an activist, founder of Conscience Resistance Network and Houston Free Thinkers, and you're also one of the co-founders of freedomcells.org. Welcome to the show, Derrick. I appreciate you accepting my invitation. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great, brother. Thanks for having me on.
Well, likewise, man. Again, I really appreciate you accepting my invitation. You're equally as busy as I am, and I appreciate you taking the time and doing this, because I wanted to learn a little bit more about what you've been up to lately, and then talk about Freedom Cells. I'm really excited about Freedom Cells. But I guess one thing for people who may be unfamiliar with you, because as the founder of Conscience Resistance Network, from my understanding, you had a YouTube channel, and I guess it got deleted.
Yeah, I did have a YouTube channel and all those traditional things. My YouTube channel got deleted in October 2020. So I had that channel. I started doing YouTube through the Houston Free Thinkers, the activist group that I helped start back in 2010. I started doing YouTube with them in like 2011. It was mainly just centered around group activism, cop watching and protests and community gardens and a lot of that sort of thing, going to the Federal Reserve. And then in 2013, I kind of branched off and started the Conscious Resistance Network, because I wanted to have an opportunity to share some things that were, my own views without like representing the Houston Free Thinkers. I decided to start kind of branching off, and that became my main focus and continues to be my main focus. I put out video reports and interviews like you're doing here, and podcasts and documentaries, and pretty much anything that comes to mind, trying to explore a lot of the realms that I think your audience would be familiar with. Obviously some of the things that often can be deemed conspiracies, what I consider to be more like exploration of true crimes that are hidden from the public and the mainstream, as well as interviewing people talking about solutions, and that could be digital solutions, permaculture solutions, spiritual solutions. There was things on the channel like affirmations, meditations, etc. So a mix of like looking at the dark stuff, like the Jeffrey Epstein, child trafficking, some of those realities, confronting government corruption, talking about anarchism from a spiritual kind of consciousness expanding perspective, and everything that kind of fits in that realm. So yeah, that's what the Conscious Resistance is. But we're still kicking despite YouTube. Imagine that, life goes on after YouTube.
Actually, are you guys having more success off of YouTube? Because Max Egan was telling me it's been better for him, actually.
Yeah, I do believe so. Like I honestly think that, so I had about 65,000 subscribers on YouTube at the time of deletion. And I think I had hit like over 5 million views and all these great things that are nice to keep track of. And that's just through YouTube, of course, right? But still, even with those numbers, it felt like there was far less views than what you would expect for those numbers. And so once my YouTube channel got deleted, and I, like other people who've been deleted, have been warning my audience since 2015, I think 2016, promoting alternative platforms to YouTube. And so it wasn't something that people weren't expecting, right? And so what had happened, I did see some people were already following me elsewhere and just like, oh, well, we knew it was going to happen. Others came aboard afterwards. But yeah, I noticed that between, say, Odyssey, BitChute, I'm also on Minds and Float. The one mainstream platform that I'm still barely hanging on a thread is Facebook. And between all of those platforms outside of Facebook, because they suppress reach, I actually see more numbers than what I was seeing on YouTube. So, even though like collectively there's not those 65,000 subscribers spread across the platforms just yet, I'm actually seeing what I think are more accurate numbers than what YouTube was probably showing me. I think that's part of the psychological manipulation too, is that they're not showing us real numbers to maybe mess with your head, like, oh yeah, nobody cares about my work, or nobody's listening, or whatever it may be.
No, that's crossed my mind plenty of times, because I was having the hardest time like building, and it was just because of the censorship and the shadow banning. And I made the mistake of bringing on someone who YouTube just doesn't like, period, as my first interviewed guest, and that was Adam Kokesh. And he was dealing with censorship and stuff like this since like 2012. So I think that, it kind of set me off on a like a crappy leg with YouTube. But I get what you're saying, man, because I mean, I've been really doing my best, putting out an average of 5-6 videos, more like 6 videos a week, interviewing a lot of higher profile people, in addition to people like you're talking to have solutions or potential solutions and things. People like bringing Max Egan on 3 times, who's been taken off of YouTube, and interviewing Professor Dolores Cahill. And the numbers are just low, just completely low. So I mean, I know that there's a lot going on with that. Do you know what it was specifically that got your YouTube channel terminated? Did you get the 3 strikes and go through the whole process? Did they just kill it?
I had 3 strikes. I had what seems to be kind of typical flow of things, where like you get banned for 1 week, for strike 1 or whatever that may be, right? Then you come back, and then a couple days later they ban you for 2 weeks, and then come back for a couple days, and then you're gone. And that happened. Like I said, I had the channel since 2013 without any sort of strikes of any kind of, in any way, copyright strikes or whatever. But then along COVID, of course, the wrong strikes start happening. And we had one video. So I don't know if I mentioned this, but the conscious resistance.com and the channels on YouTube, BitChute and Library, etc., are, I call it the Conscious Resistance Network because it's my content, but there's also a few other contributors there. And the original idea, the intention that we're still working towards and hoping to kind of launch later this year, is to have it really be like a network that collects not just my viewpoints, but we have multiple contributors, similar to the One Great Work.
That's what it made me think about when you said it. But yeah,
that's like the same original intention that I've had. We, to some degree, we have that. Like on the website, we have like a music tab. I haven't updated in a while, but it's basically lots of different like truth conscious music. There's different podcasts from different folks. Like I do the Free Thinker Radio, and then my buddy, John from Freedom Cell Network, he does videos, and my other buddy, Danny, him and his wife, they do the Sovereign Love Stream, which is kind of like more on the spiritual consciousness expansion side. So the idea being that we could have written content, video content from a mix of contributors on any of these topics that range in there. So yeah, like I think that's, for me, that's the strength of what we're doing, right? Like that's the strength of being able to have many voices out there. And sometimes, though, I guess it can be problematic. Like if somebody on the team says something wrong, well, then we're going to all get taken down, right? So that's sort of what happened with my buddy Johan, who is from India. He's been doing just great work, and he's lately been focusing on Hindi language stuff. So he hasn't been putting out as much content in English, but he's just incredible activist who's just blowing up. He's actually going viral in India right now for talking about PCR tests and masks and like lockdowns. Like their media actually comes and covers the protests and stuff. So they had a big protest sometime, I think last fall, and it was like this national burn your mask thing, and they made it again go viral. And so he put the video out of that, and then that was like our first strike. And then the second one was like John it's like they were just finding things like
Right.
we have like on our website, like one of our ways to make some extra income is through selling kratom and CBD through John Bush's store. So they found a video that it says that in like every one of our videos, like in the description, but they found one and decided like, oh, this is, breaking the rules somehow. So that was two. And I'm like, dang, we're like one strike away from being gone. I haven't even done anything yet, and then the final one was a video that I did after like the final 2-week thing. It was about the fact that there's a number of companies. This was based on an article I did for the Last American Vagabond, the website I write for. And it was about the fact that there are companies connected to Bill Gates and companies connected to people in the coronavirus response who are working on micro needles, like vaccine patches and all these different kinds of technology. And like, that's like really, the video is basically saying like, this is the future of healthcare. They want people to have wearable technology and injectable technology to monitor your biology. And so, I mean, it was just me talking about the facts of that, and that triggered somebody somewhere, and that kind of got the channel deleted.
Wow, that's crazy. What's going on with this censorship is really it's very disheartening, and it's what's really disheartening about the entirety of it is the fact that people aren't really standing up for our First Amendment, for our right to freedom of speech. It's like if you don't agree with somebody, then you can just tune out. But if you're going to be silent when they're trying to cut off somebody's voice and what they have to say, it's going to happen to someone else, and it's going to continue to happen until it's a set standard, and then you really don't have an opportunity to be able to speak freely without potentially what you're saying being a crime. And I would have thought that people would have been waking up to this. I mean, Alex Jones was kind of the big one that set the stage, almost like as a test, in my opinion, of how people were going to react, because he was so controversial. And nobody really, except for a few people in the truth movement, really came to his aid. And then about a year later, you started seeing the systematic things happening with the AI algo. And then now you just have channels getting deleted left and right constantly. And nobody's really speaking up. I mean, unfortunately, I do have to use YouTube. I mean, I don't have to, but I'm trying to get the message out. So I'm utilizing the tools of the system against itself. I'm on Library and Odyssey as well. I'm not as spread out on different video platforms as you are right now. I just wasn't finding a lot coming from it. I know the guys over at Library and Odyssey, good people. So I'm really happy with building there. And that's what I've been doing, is posting up extra content to encourage people to go to that platform and at least be watching on both platforms, because I know my channel is limited on days. I haven't personally gotten any strikes. Well, I have one strike now. Everything that I've had in the past I did the manual review stuff and it had removed. But I'm surprised I haven't had as many issues. Now, I wanted to ask you about your run for mayor of Houston, because I thought that was cool that you were doing that. And then the really cool thing that I really liked about it, and I don't mind speaking freely in this aspect, is how you were speaking out against the 5G technologies. You were going to local council meetings in Houston and trying to educate different politicians and different constituents in the area, as well as the local community. Can you tell me how all that came about and what ended up happening as a result?
Yeah. So, well, thank you. I appreciate the support. So that whole thing, it really started out as a joke. Anybody who follows my work knows that, I am an anarchist, and I would say, like, whenever I decided I was going to do that and I kind of announced it publicly, or even when I first started talking about it privately, my partner, she was like, what the heck are you talking about? Like, you're going to run for mayor, just totally confused and bewildered. And then when I announced it publicly, I had some people following work like, oh, you're a sellout and this and that, so it was definitely not a decision that came like easy. It was really something I thought about, but it honestly started out as a joke. And it was because the mayor, who is still the current mayor in Houston, Sylvester Turner, he basically he's just a puppet. I mean, that's the long and short of it. He's a puppet. The mayor before him was a puppet. When I started doing activism in 2010, the previous mayor was doing all kinds of crazy stuff around like police violence. They passed a food sharing ordinance, making it illegal to share food with more than 5 people at a time. They, just all kinds of stuff. I was confronting her about Floyd, and it was really the beginning of my journalism, of going out and putting the camera in like a politician's face and drilling him with hard questions. And so that trend just continued when this new mayor came in. And in 2018, I was just wrapping up my Jeffrey Epstein documentary, and I was starting to look for something new to investigate. And I was also coming back to Houston after being on the road for a while. And I just happened to start, I'd heard people talking about 5G, and over the years, I kind of looked into the dangers of cell phones and some of the concerns around those areas, but I'd never really dove in. It was just sort of like, yeah, okay, one of these days I'll get into that. And and then I just happened to come back to Houston, and I heard that the mayor was having a press conference with the CEO of Verizon, and they were announcing they were going to turn Houston into this 5G city. And so I just like, hey, maybe I need to learn more about this to see what's happening, since it's happening in Houston. And I started to dig into 5G just enough that I could go to this press conference and I could confront the mayor. I questioned him and I questioned the CEO of Verizon. And that was kind of the beginning of my foray into the whole 5G topic. And that was, I would say, September 2018, October, in that area. And basically, as I'm investigating the 5G issue and as I'm writing my documentary, I'm learning more and more, just seeing how corrupt it is. And I keep going to the city council, as you said, to confront them. And I was sharing studies with them, sharing, reports that are out in public, confronting the mayor out in public. I confronted Ted Cruz. I confronted the head of the FCC. Like, all of that is shown in my documentary, The 5G Trojan Horse, that I ended up releasing in early 2019. And so I was just kind of going through this journey of like investigating this topic, also confronting the mayor about other issues. But I started to kind of get known as the 5G guy in Houston, I guess, because the videos were going viral. I was going to city council. The first one I did before YouTube deleted it had nearly, I think, 900,000 views, almost 1 million views of just me talking shit to them for 5 minutes, like about why they're just not paying attention. But people resonated with it. And so as I was investigating that, and that rolled into 2019, I'm sitting around with some friends and we're just watching the mayor just continue to be a criminal. And there was this one video clip that went viral in Houston where the mayor was having a back and forth with one of the other city council members, and the council member called him by his first name, and he said, "That's Mayor Turner. I'm the mayor. You will talk to me like the mayor." Just like, whoa, who the heck is this dude? This dude's like really thinks he's something special. And so I'm sitting around with some friends like, this guy thinks he's something special, Somebody needs to go out there and speak for the nobodies. Who's going to speak up for the nobodies? And that's kind of where the joke started. And then over subsequent visits with a couple of buddies, it started to become maybe this could really happen. Maybe I could really do this. And I started to okay, what would it take if I did enter the race? The other motivation, not only just out of that joke, was that I was getting sick of every time I would go to city council. You get your 2 to 3 minutes. For anybody who's ever been to one of these things, you can sign up for 1 minute, 2 minute, 3 minute, right? And they have depending on how it goes in your city, they're usually pretty strict with this, and if they don't like what you're saying, they're going to give you your 2 minutes and then ding, thank you, bye, brush you off, move on.
Right.
It's a very, I think, especially for people who are told, when you have a problem, just go to the city council, go to the mayor, ask for some help. They're going there, and I've seen people, they go there, they're in tears. They're really hey, my family's dealing with this. I need help, because they don't know where else to go. And they expect that, or we're told the government's here to help us, right? So they go there. But what I've learned is that if you're not talking about an issue that doesn't benefit them in some way, then they couldn't care less. You'll sit there and say your thing, or even worse, if you're saying something they don't like, then they definitely will totally just sit there. It's insane to me. They'll sit there on their cell phones and act like you're not there until the time runs out. It's nuts, but it was the reality. And so that was another motivation. I was just getting sick of him running away from me. So my thought was look, this dude is just full of himself. Maybe somebody should offer a different voice. And if I was to enter this race and play their little legal game, because I had to, actually file, I don't like dealing with the government at all. So that was a big issue for me. But I decided, okay, I'll get past it so I can do this bigger thing. I filed the paperwork. I had to pay $1,200, and I'm a legal candidate in the race. And at that point, that means that I am now able to be interviewed by local media. They have to bring me on to these different debates and discussions. People start reaching out to me. I start getting invited to places that in all of my activism in Houston in the last 10 years, I never got invited to speak at as just Derrick Broze, the activist, the local conspiracy theorist, or whatever they want to label me. But when you put candidate for mayor next to my name, all of a sudden I was getting invited to speak at old folks' homes, getting invited to speak at the high school, getting invited to speak in the poor communities and the rich communities, and places that I'd never been invited to before. And I was still pretty much just sharing the same message, that I think we need to limit government as much as possible in our lives, and people need to have the freedom to do what is best for them. And so I tried to take that angle and look in a realistic way at all these different issues that were important to people. I didn't want to run a joke campaign where it was just me just being silly or just, talking shit. Like I wanted to actually, okay, people are going to come to me and I don't think I have a chance to win, but I at least would like to have some answers for these questions. Like, the local issues, they're not the exciting things that we like to care about. It's like flooding and what are we going to do about the traffic and this stupid stuff that I think is a distraction from bigger issues that affect people locally. But still, in many ways, those are the things that people care about, right? So you start thinking like, how do we take on flooding without growing the government, without any kind of new taxes, programs, departments, like, totally in a decentralized bottom-up way. And that led to ideas like, okay, well, we have this bayou in Houston that floods. And I had to learn a lot about the bayou that, I lived there my whole life and I know it floods, but I didn't really know why, and learn about that and come up with the idea of like, well, look, if we plant hemp along the bayou, hemp will help like soak up the water. It'll remediate the soil. It'll like, just all these benefits, right? And some people really love those ideas. Other people were like, he wants to plant weed on the bayou, stuff like that. But it was honestly a huge learning experience, man. Like I had no expectation of winning in as far as votes go. But like I said, I definitely got to speak to a lot of new people. I was focusing on going to the local colleges and universities. And we had a really grassroots campaign. I mean, I felt honored that there was like 10 to 15 people who were like dedicated full-time, like taking me to events, coming with me to events, like talking to people. We were phone banking, doing all that traditional stuff, but also using everything I've learned about through activism and journalism, which is where these other people really suck because they don't know anything about the internet. They're all just out of touch. And so we were making like super slick and well-produced videos. And, I think we did a good job of getting the ideas out there. And at the very least, I was able to sit there and like point at the mayor and be like, this dude has been doing all this stuff. He's full of it. Don't believe him. And he couldn't run away, and like, I got to have that moment. And one last little interesting thing. I thought it was about a week and a half before the election. They're doing these constant like debates where you get invited to like, this Republican group wants to invite you over here and this Democratic group wants to invite you over here. One other thing is the other reason I was okay with it is in Houston, at least on local races, there's no party. So you don't have to like, I pledge allegiance to the Republican Party or Democratic Party. You can kind of tell the mayor is clearly a Democrat. He was endorsed by Obama. The other guys you could tell was like a Trump guy, but there's no official like DR red, blue. Like, so I was just like, hey, I'm just me. This is my ideas. Right. And so I was all about that. But as we're doing these debates where you're getting invited to speak to these different groups, there was one that just presented this perfect opportunity that I couldn't pass up. And there's 10 or 12 of us on the stage, and there's like a couple hundred people there listening, and questions are being asked, and they go down the row and they ask each of you. And I can't remember what the question was, but it presented me with the opportunity to give the answer, which was, at the end of the day, we just need to recognize that government and media are organized crime. And there's this like audible gasp in the room of like, oh, followed by like an eruption of applause. Like, and I was like, oh, cool. They like, they're down with that. I was sort of like, all right, that's just going to hang out there for a second. So we put the video up. We like circulated that clip of like, hey, here's the campaign. Here's what we're about. And I put that up on Facebook, and they banned me for a week, literally before the election. So the week before the election, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't communicate. I couldn't like, other than like my email list and stuff like that. But again, like all this talk of Facebook and election interference, I'm like, okay, I don't know who's behind this, but clearly if I'm a candidate and I've done all the legal things, but then this platform, which was the main way that people consume political campaigns, talking about Facebook and YouTube. It really sucked. I hate Facebook. I hate these platforms, but you literally cannot, I don't want to say you can't, because I think you can, you just got to be more creative, and it can be more energy draining, time consuming, because we did use and promote alternative platforms. But without a doubt, the local people, they're using Facebook to find out about these campaigns and stuff. So anyways, the fact that they took us down like the week before the election, to me was just like, not that I was expecting to win, but like how much could that have affected the campaign, right? The fact that for a week up to the election, I can't say anything, do anything. And it was in response to me saying that at one of the debates.
It's absolutely crazy, man. But I commend you for doing what you did, even if it started out potentially as a joke idea. You utilizing your time well, and knowing that, there's a probability that you weren't going to win, but at least you had a chance to say something that maybe somebody would hear, and who knows what that would have inspired, man. And that's the beautiful thing about doing what we do. And as far as like people giving you shit, I get it, because I was following Adam Kokesh with him running for president. He was kind of getting a similar deal because, again, anarchist. And I'm an anarchist too. I just have started over the past about a year ago, just started to give up the fight of calling myself an anarchist because of what the mainstream media has been doing with Antifa. The fact that the socially accepted norm definition of anarchy is not the Greek no master, no ruler. It's chaos, Antifa, lawlessness. And unfortunately, that's what society thinks. So, as a norm, it just wasn't a fight that I wanted to continue trying to argue with people and convince people that I'm not Antifa. How do you, have you had any kind of similar run-ins calling yourself an anarchist in 2020 and 2021?
I mean, I definitely hear you on the sort of well, for one, the misrepresentation of that word, which is just so abundant, and it has been prior to our time. I mean, anytime you can go back and find a movie before either one of us are born, if they say the word anarchy, they're saying it in reference to violence or chaos.
Something bad, negative.
Yeah, exactly. And that's just been par for the course. And the thing, I mean, I agree with you to a certain extent. Like, I still do believe that that word has value, and like, and I also like that it freaks people out too. I mean, I'll just be honest. Like, I like that that strikes fear or maybe an uncertainty in certain people's minds, but then also being able to turn that into, but here's what it actually means. You know, like maybe that you hear that and you think something scary. Like, there's that meme going around that you've probably seen. That's like the top panel is what you're talking about, Antifa, people like looting the streets or whatever, smashing windows, and it says, "This is not anarchy." And the bottom panel shows a group of people like in the community garden or something that says, "This is anarchy." You know, and I think so. I'm not going to spend the rest of my life or time or energy trying to like convince people that, you know, this is what it really means. But when given the opportunity, I definitely try to educate people about that. But you're right, though. I mean, we're going up against this has actually been like a 200-year like battle over this word, really, because of even within the anarchist movement, you know, as you're familiar with, there's people who tend to be more like left socialist anarchist, and there's like a whole spectrum within that.
Yeah,
You know,
there's
and
like
people
there's like communist anarchist or there's the capitalist anarchist.
It's just a whole, like, honestly, like it's something that I really am a nerd for. I love anarchist history of like Europe and the Americas because I like to study it. I think there's a lot of knowledge, and also the funny thing is that even with the word, we're having the same debates that they were having 200 years ago. You know, in the mid 1800s, you had like the Boston School of Anarchists, which would be more like what we kind of see ourselves at. That was even around the time the first usage of the term voluntarist, and you know, these people would consider themselves individualist anarchists. And then you had the Chicago School of Anarchists, and these were more of the anarcho-communists, anarcho-syndicalists who believed in violence as a method for achieving their thing. And this is where the negative connotation comes from, because there were people alive who considered themselves anarchists who were committing assassinations, bombings, and doing things like that because they considered in their philosophy that what we would call terrorism is a legitimate form of fighting against the state. So, but even then, the Boston anarchists were critical of them. So there was already these separation of like, no, violence is good. This is the way to fight the state. And the others like, no, this isn't going to help. You're going to totally destroy our movement. And here we are 200 years later, right? And it's the same thing. So I find it fascinating that we still have the same debates. And yeah, I mean, it's hard to unpack all that, right? When somebody hears the word anarchist or somebody says that and they believe that that means Antifa or whatever it may be. But I also think that it can be helpful, though, to help people understand that that's not what it means, right? Like, I mean, I know plenty of people who would consider themselves anarchist, again, whether or not they're like flag waving anarchist or just in conversation to say, yeah, I'm an anarchist. Generally, this is what I believe. And these are people that are like, you know, of all ages, all backgrounds, all colors, all professions, parents, you know, individual, like all kinds of people. Like that's, I think, what's important for people to see, that it's not this image that people think of like violence and, you know, inciting violence, but also acknowledging that it is a nuanced subject. And there are people who consider themselves anarchists who think that that is a legitimate form of kind of fighting for the same goals. So, I mean, it's a philosophical disagreement, but unfortunately it definitely has done a lot of damage to the school of thought and to the word itself.
I like the way that you explain that, though. You do a great job of explaining things in a way that I think others can understand it. And I do try to take those opportunities to educate. I just don't introduce myself as an anarchist and like kind of put that label out there as like my introduction. But yeah, I definitely am trying to, it got to be, especially around April and May of last year, it just got to be a lot. as far as people contacting me, and then me going on other people's shows and saying that I'm an anarchist, and then people were commenting, he's Antifa, because I got a mohawk, I've got tattoos, I kind of fit the stereotype of a violent person. So God forbid.
And that's all stupid stuff too as well, right? Like people, like just even the fact that there's a stereotype of what that's supposed to be, right? So then if you, oh my God, he's got like a different haircut. I mean, I'm the same thing, and I've got tattoos, and like I've had mohawks, and I'm definitely not like some right-wing conservative, but I also am not like some like super left-wing. Like, in fact, it's funny, I've known friends over the years who they sported patches that said things like Antifa against Antifa. People who are like saying like, we're anti-fascist, but we don't support these fascists. So we're like,
wow.
like specifically because they could see what was going on. They're like, hey, we're against racism and bigotry and these kinds of things, but we don't agree with these tactics that are happening here, And so I think and that's another thing that sucks. I mean, it's just so much of the way that the conversation happens in the mainstream and the way people take that and interpret it, and then oftentimes don't go any deeper, because I mean, again, it's another fascinating piece of our history, that the origins of Antifa, of people who were anti-fascists, who were in not just Germany, but other parts of Europe, who were out in the streets fighting early fascists, early Nazis. And some of those people would consider themselves commies who were fighting Nazis, but then there was also people who were out in the streets fighting the commies and the Nazis. So, it's just, I think that like, it sucks that like, even think about that, to call yourself an anti-fascist now would get you labeled a bad thing in some people's eyes. Like, that's insane.
Especially when you think about fascism, and if you explain it to most people, they'll think it's bad. But then you say Antifa, and it means this, that's how you would label yourself. Because that's, I try to explain about the anarchy thing. It's like, I try to use monarchy as an example. Do you have a king or queen? But I did notice that there's basically dualities in everything. And, so, I mean, it's going to be good and bad. There's going to be positive and negative, that yin and the yang. So it's just one of those things I've had to learn. Nothing is pure. It doesn't seem, maybe love, but there's not very many pure things in this world. Now I know you're I went about the halfway mark with your time so far. I want to talk about Freedom Cells. I want to ask, because this is something that's really resonating with some of the stuff that I've been studying and looking into. I know that you're not the only founder, but you're one of the individuals who started this thing. Can you explain in your words what exactly Freedom Cells is, who all was involved with being founders, and where you guys are at today with it?
Yeah, thanks, brother. So Freedom Cells is, so obviously you're showing on screen right now for those who are watching the freedomcells.org website. So that's the digital home for the Freedom Cell Network, right?
And this is what it looks like when you sign up. So it's this, you may see something different if you just go to the website and you haven't signed up, but this will be on there. But some of this other
everything on the left that you're showing there, like the cell map, the member map, you have to log in to get those, which is like the main reason the site exists. So I'll explain what the site is in just a moment, but just some background on why the site exists. So I first heard about the concept in 2015 from my buddy, John Bush. And I think that his first talk on it was in 2014, I want to say 2014 or 2015. And, he was the first person that started explaining this concept of decentralized organizing. And it's based on a couple different concepts that we took and then sort of made even more decentralized. One of those concepts is called octalogs. And there's a guy named Bob Podolsky. He wrote a book called Flourish. And Flourish is based on the research of him and this other guy named John David Garcia. So
it's called what? No, what did you call
Flourish?
That? Though? No, Octa something?
Octalogs.
Octalogs.
Yeah. So that comes from the reason the octalog name, there's octa, obviously 8, because John David Garcia and Bob Podolsky were doing this research, and they were studying like group dynamics and just social organizing and what's the ideal number, if there is a number. And based on their research, they found that a group of 8 people was most ideal, because if you have too many people, things can get a bit, too many chiefs, as they say, right? Or maybe you have too little people, you can't get bigger projects done. But you have this ideal number of 8. So Bob and John David Garcia started developing that concept. That led to Bob's book, Flourish, where he talks about these concepts of octalogs. And he has a very specific way that he goes about it. Like in his book, he believes that the octalogs should be equal for male, for female. And he has like a very specific ideology and kind of belief behind that. What John did and then shared with me was take that concept of 8 people organizing and sort of not abandon Bob's beliefs on that. People can use his strategies if they find them valuable, but said like, okay, let's just take that core group of 8 people. And let's say if we start forming these groups or these cells or pods or hubs or circles or whatever you want to call them, the name is really irrelevant. That so you create a cell in your area. Maybe you start on like the west side of town or nearest to you, right? And you start meeting people through Facebook or before the site existed in other places. Y'all start organizing, start meeting in real life. The goal is always to organize in real life. So maybe you start out with 3 or 4 people. Then over time, as this concept spreads, you get more people coming to your get-togethers, your meetings, and you start to form a group of 6 to 7 to eventually 8 people that you can trust. And your cell starts thinking, okay, what are the things we need to do to make sure that we can thrive and survive into the future? So let's look at the area of food. Okay, we want to make sure that everybody has some food backed up in case of, the power goes out, in case, zombie apocalypse, whatever it may be. It's just good practice for us to be prepared and to have, to think of the future. So your group starts in that area. Everybody starts getting 1 week of backup supply of food to start, right? And then that becomes 2 weeks, and maybe that becomes a month. And then maybe you also say, well, we want to make sure everybody in our cell has some understanding of self-defense. Maybe your group likes firearms, so y'all do firearm training. Maybe your group doesn't like guns, so y'all do self-defense class together. But the point is that the knowledge and the information and the skills within the group are being diffused. There's not one single individual that has all that knowledge, has all that skills and that information. Obviously, within your group, there might be people who do have certain specialties and certain areas of knowledge that they can share. And then perhaps they can teach a skill share to the rest of the group. Hey guys, I want to show you how to do this coding I do on, or how to build this house or how to build it, whatever skills. I mean, we all have so many skills within us so the idea is that we're sharing skills, we're sharing knowledge, we're doing things like prepping, getting prepared for whatever that may be. I mean, for my friends back in Texas, they just had this huge storm, power went out, those sorts of things. It doesn't have to be that we're preparing for the economic collapse or the government, whatever. It can just be preparing for the future. And kind of on that note, we've really pushed back on this idea that being somebody who is prepared is seen as a crazy thing, right? Like, just like we're talking about now, it's like being an anti-fascist in some circles is a bad thing. And this way, you have this vision of like doomsday preppers, they're like hiding out in bunkers or whatever. Yeah. Like, they have really gone to a great effort to demonize that. But every single one of our ancestors got us to where we are here now by preparing for the winter, by thinking ahead, by preparing, and this is something that in our modern time, we've really gotten away from. And then now it's like frowned upon, like, oh my God, he's a prepper. He's preparing for the potentials that could happen in the future. How dare he, right? So we're trying to push back against that idea and say, as a group, you can get backup supply of food, you can get encrypted form of communication, you can teach each other skills, you can, do some self-defense, whatever your cell is interested in is really what it comes down to. There might be some cells, and there are cells that have formed because maybe it's a group of parents that come together, right? And they all got kids. And so they form a cell that's based around parenting, raising the kids, just all those kinds of needs, right? And they might have other needs, but they kind of center around that. Some people are hyper focused on growing food. Again, we made the concept very decentralized and said, like, look, let's just encourage people to start building these local pockets of cells in their area. And so I heard John first started talking about it in that time. And then in 2016, I really took it on and I started putting videos about it. And I helped build the previous website that we had for a couple of years. And that was the first time that we created this map that allowed people to start connecting, and just saw the power in that, like, holy crap, we can bring people together and we don't have to do anything. We just create the platform, and then they'll find each other. They'll start meeting in real life. And then whatever becomes of it is up to how determined the people are, really. Because as a decentralized concept, like you were showing on the website, we do have like a how-to page that shows some how-to videos. And there's like a Freedom Cell manual that we kind of crowdsource in the community. Because some people are really looking for a step-by-step process. Other people, they get it. It's like you explain the concept and they run with it. And we've seen massive explosion of Freedom Cells in India and Australia, and obviously in the US and across Europe. It's really just been blowing my mind. We have a lot of people organizing, creating events like on the website, creating cells on the website, as well as cells on Telegram. We have kind of like cells in both places. And then meeting up. We have people sharing like, hey, we just had this huge event together, or we're all pulling our money out of the bank, or we're doing these different things, or we're hosting garden days. It's really just been beautiful and very rewarding to see like that happen, because Like I said, John and I have been promoting it for about 4 or 5 years, but it wasn't really till COVID happened that it seemed like, okay, now people are ready. People are really ready for solutions. All of a sudden, people are just flooding the network. People are using the map and searching. And I will say, so you're showing the map right here. So we have the cell locator map and the member map. And this is all in the how-to, but just in case anybody wants to go join, we do ask people to add their location on your profile. We don't ask you to add your house. Let me reiterate that. Do not put your home address. We're not saving these, just so you know, we don't save any addresses. It's just on your profile, you can set a location. So maybe you set the nearest town or county or whatever, however specific you want to be. So then people can come on like we're doing right here and can search the city you're in. You can search within 25, 50, 100 miles, and you can see if there's any cells or people existing. So I encourage everybody, when you join, create a free profile, put your location, put a park nearby or something that's convenient for you, and then search both the member and the cell map. Sometimes there might be cells that already exist, and you can just message them or join their events and connect and see if you guys vibe. Or you can create your own cell, especially if there's nobody in your area yet. I encourage you to create a cell so that the next person coming after you will plug in and find you. Because there are some people who've told us like, man, there's nobody in my area. Some people are driving an hour or more to go meet other people. If you're really wanting to get together and build community, then I think you'll make the effort. And I should just kind of continue with the process. So you're creating these local cells. The idea being that once you got that, say you got that West Winston-Salem cell, but then things have grown so much. Now there's enough people for you to have 2 cells, right? So you start saying, well, hey, there's some of us who are on this side of town. So we're going to start an east side cell and you guys do the west side. Y'all meet with your inner cadres, as John called them, or your super local cells on a weekly basis, let's say, or y'all keep in touch on a regular basis and y'all have meetings every couple of weeks. But then once a month, the cells in that area, they get together for a larger meeting of like, hey, what are you guys working on? Let's share some ideas. Let's share some skills and resources and ideas. And as we're all doing this, like if you go to the member map or the cell map, either one, and just click submit without doing anything, you should be able to see the entire map with everything that exists. I mean, we just recently passed 20,000 people. Just click submit on there and see if it'll show you the map.
Submit, okay.
And we just passed 20,000 people from all around the world. And if you zoom in there, you can see that we're just like, there's just more and more. So it's only showing you 25 per page, but yeah, there's out of 20, you can see the number, there's 22,000 people on the site now. I can change it to 100
per page.
There you go. Just as an example, you can kind of see like that it's growing rapidly. It just continues to grow. And I encourage anybody who's interested to join the platform. Again, like I said, that's the only reason the website exists. Since it's decentralized, we can't tell anybody how to run the website, right? But we absolutely encourage people to not use this like Facebook. Don't use this like another place to post pictures of videos and cats and to argue and debate about politics. One of the big things that we say in the Freedom Cell Network on the website and in the pages is that assume everybody knows the problems and focus on the solution. If people have made it to the Freedom Cell Network, they're probably pretty awake to what's going on in the world right now. There's no reason to sit there and just discuss that all day. Like there's other platforms that exist for that. The only reason I think this site should exist, even though we added like the events, we tried to make it super functional. People have been using it for a while. They know that it's come a long way since we got a full-time developer, and we've made it much more functional than it was just last year. But the main reason the site exists is just for those maps, for people to search members, find people near them, search cells, find cells near them. If there is not a cell near you, start one, create a cell on Telegram. If you use Telegram, just use that, and then people will contact you. People will find you and start getting organized in the real world. So as you build one local cell, I'm building one local cell over here. We're literally creating a parallel network, because I don't believe, despite running for mayor, I don't believe that voting is going to achieve the change that we really want in the long term. I don't believe violence is going to achieve the change we want in the long term. The only thing I think that is really going to get us there, especially when we're thinking long term, thinking of the future coming generations, is for us to build an alternative system, a parallel network. And that's going to take time. It's going to take a lot of work and a lot of energy. But if we don't even start getting to connect with each other, especially in a time when they're telling us, cover your faces and don't gather in person, it's never going to happen.
No, dude, it's so well said. And I wanted to talk with you about a lot of things, but Freedom Cells was really the main reason I wanted to connect with you with this interview. Before we started recording, I was telling you about me studying legal fiction, the sovereign freedom movement, and I've done interviews with Ammon Bundy. He's got the peoplesrights.org, which is the neighbor organized defense network, which is parallel to some of the ideas with Freedom Cells. And then the cool thing about peoplesrights.org and Freedom Cells, in my opinion, is it's, as you said, it's just a template for connecting people. So it could be utilized in a lot of different ways. So I'm trying to gather a lot of individuals and groups in the freedom sovereignty element, people that are looking into status change from a common law, trust law, equity law perspective, commerce law, going into specifics of people going into courts using affidavits, notice of liabilities, and a variety of things like this. So as I was explaining to you, I think there's a lot of these individuals and groups that are missing a piece or two or three or four from the puzzle. And by everybody working together, potentially we could make this easier, help each other out, build that strength in number idea. Now I'm putting together an alliance council, and I would like to invite you and anybody else in Freedom Cells to come to the table. I'm not expecting everybody to say, yes, I want to be a part of this thing right away. But what I'm trying to do is get everybody to come to the table, have a conversation, see how this resonates, and see if people want to move forward. And the idea of just building those numbers and uniting, kind of expediting some of the things that you're talking about, because the more of us thought leaders and more of us chiefs and things to that effect that can get together, I think with working together, we can make what we do individually and collectively a lot more effective. So ultimately, I'd like to invite you to the table. Would you be open to coming and discussing something to this effect?
Yeah, man. I mean, absolutely. I definitely agree with you. Like, I want it to be clear that myself, nor John, nor anybody that is, officially associated with the Freedom Cell Network, which again, I use that term lightly, right? Like John helped create the idea. I helped propel it. He gives me a lot of credit for helping push it out there. But at this point, that's irrelevant. It's just a concept. It's out there, right?
That's how I am with trying to gather people. I'm just trying to get the ball rolling.
Yeah, but absolutely. Like, obviously we know that, like, at the moment, a lot of people hear us being the loudmouth speaking about this concept. So they sort of associate us with the network. We are the admins of the website. So we have some influence and some role there. But ultimately, I want to work with anybody who is focused on decentralized solutions. For me personally, apolitical solutions. I'm not really interested in putting money in or time into political campaigns and things of that sort. Right. But with Freedom Cells, I was given a few examples of like food and, currency, encryption, and, it's a decentralized concept that if somebody is interested in common law, just as an example, or natural law, these kinds of things, they could have Freedom Cells that are centered around that while also growing their own food, also networking with other Freedom Cells. And maybe they share that knowledge, and those who inclined in those ways would use those tactics, and those who are not would not use those tactics. I mean, That's the whole beauty, is that we can create this network where we're not having to be the same communities, to be the same cells or the same groups. We can learn from each other, we can share from each other, and if we can find common ground where we can support each other, then ultimately that's a great thing.
Cool. I love it. And I knew that with this being a decentralized idea, I knew I could have come in and started something without talking to you. But I wanted to talk to you and then try to reach out to John and anyone else because of the things that you guys have done over the years. Even if you don't associate yourselves as founders of Freedom Cells, the impacts that you guys have made as individuals, I feel has been a blessing to all of us. And I would like to add you guys to that equation. I feel like the more of us who have that that really want to be the change that we want to see in this world, getting together and making that impact. So
yeah, I'm all about working with other people who are doing things. There's enough just people who are just talking. And I think that you probably recognize, as probably much of your audience does, that we're sort of at the point now where it's like, let's either do something or nothing's going to happen.
That's what I tell people. The time is now. Otherwise, kind of get used to 1984 Brave New World and being a good citizen. It's one of the two. You either step up and stand up for what you believe in, or you just become a good citizen and just do what you're told, because we're going in that direction.
Absolutely.
The last question I want to ask you is about this conference, this Greater Reset thing. What is your involvement with it, and what is the Greater Reset conference for people who are unfamiliar?
Sure, man. Thank you for giving me some time to talk about this, because this is kind of leads right into what I was just saying, that like either you're going to step up and do something or nothing's going to happen. And so this is what we consider to be an initiative of the Freedom Cell Network. So the same team, same people behind it. mainly me and John, and then our admin Ramiro, as well as some different volunteers who are really just being amazing and helping us make this happen. So this is actually our second event, what we call an activation. And the reason we emphasize that name is rather than just being like another, especially in the time of COVID, there's Zoom calls every week for all kinds of things, right? Instead of just being another online conference or even an in-person conference or a music festival or something like that, we wanted to really distinguish it. And that's where the term activation comes from, because the idea was, how can we get people together for 5 days of solutions-based talks in different areas, talking about counter economics, alternative finance, talking about digital technology, talking about permaculture and growing your own food, body, mind, health, education, parenting, these sorts of things, as well as actually community building. Bring people together for that, totally focused on solutions. Again, not people who are just going to sit here and tell us all about the problems that we've already known about and most of us are aware of. You got plenty of people doing that. So we did the first one in late January, and the original intention was to counter the World Economic Forum. The World Economic Forum since last June has been pushing this Great Reset agenda, and their Great Reset agenda is very top-down, authoritarian. It's like, let's use blockchain to control, manipulate everybody's lives and control humans, and let's, all the worst ways. Let's take control of the environment, but they promote it as it's for sustainability, for diversity, and for inclusivity, and these kinds of buzzwords.
And you'll be happy.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to own nothing and you'll be happy by 2030.
You'll be happy.
So this is a very real agenda that people need to understand. And this is not like, hey, they might do this one day. This is like, it's 2021 and they're saying by 2030, it's going to be done. So again, you either start acting now and work to offer an alternative or to push back or whatever it may be, or get swept up in it. And like you said, Brave New World, 1984, et cetera. So I refuse to do that. John refuses to do that. And I think many of you guys out there probably refuse to do that. So that's where the greater reset idea, we said, look, rather than us spending a week listening to the World Economic Forum talk about their dystopian vision, let's get people together, some powerful speakers, some people who are on the community level, people who are out there doing things, and let's focus on solutions. The first one was at the end of January. We had 150,000 people streaming live from around the world. It was just amazing. We had watch parties taking place all over the world and really reached a lot of people. And it's created this community now around the greater reset, both online through our emailing list and then through the Telegram chat that we've just built up, almost 20,000 people on there. And those people are learning about the Freedom Cell Network. These people are learning about agorism. They're learning about voluntarism. They're learning what anarchism really means, right? They're learning about how to grow their own food. And so we did the first one at the end of January. Now we're doing the next one at the end of May. And we haven't even announced, we still have 20 more speakers to announce, some really, really powerful people. And you'll notice, for anybody who checked out the website, it isn't a libertarian or an anarchist or a specific event. Like, we wanted to reach across the spectrum for people who, regardless of their political affiliation or what side they lean this way or that way, if they're people who are focused on solutions, who are offering an alternative to the state, and who are really doing things like getting activated, then we want to hear from them. And so that's kind of what we're doing here. And we have that event coming at the end of the May. We also have this, you see, we're calling it D3, the Decentralized, Distributed, and Disruptive Tech Summit. And that's just going to be a 2-day virtual only event that John's going to be hosting, that I'll be helping out with. And as it sounds, like, we're going to put 2 days of people who are focused on technology, digital technology, and the positive aspects of it. Because there are some really scary aspects of it, of course, things that I've been writing about and reporting for years: facial recognition, surveillance, social credit scores, this technocracy that I've written about in some of my books and articles. Yeah. So we're gonna show, like, here's a different side of technology. Here's that'll be the 24th and the 25th, totally virtual. And then the activation, the 24th and 28th of March, that whole week, is going to be online. Anybody can watch for free on our website, but we're also going to have 2 official events. John's going to host one in Austin, Texas, and I'm going to be hosting one down here in Mexico. We're about to post those details on the website, but basically the events are going to be like $30-$40 in person for a full week. There'll be some of the speakers in Austin, some of the speakers in Mexico, and then you can kind of watch the presentation on a big screen with other people in person, as well as we're going to have all these watch parties happening around the world. So, we're going big, man. It's like, look, this is it. We got to like offer an alternative, because there's nobody else that I can see around the world that is really trying to push back, other than just bitching about it on YouTube and Facebook and wherever else. Like, of course, we're all concerned about where things are headed, but again, what are we going to do if we're not putting forward solutions, both in our actions and through our work, like you're doing here? then I don't think we're really a part of the solution at this point. And in 2021, like, solutions to me is the only thing that matters anymore. Like, I'm still doing my research and writing articles and working on exposing the corruption and all that good stuff. But at this point, it's like, for the people, those of us who know what's going on, like, we need to like get our hands in the dirt. We need to like figuratively and literally like get our hands in the dirt and really start taking action. So yeah, I'm excited, and I hope everybody will check out the Greater Reset.
And I'm going to have links down below for everything we talked about too. I usually mention that at the beginning of the videos. I'll have to do that in the intro I put together, but people should assume the reason I was highlighting these and going down to this speaker edition, not just because of you, is because of Professor Dolores Cahill. So she's someone that I'm going to be inviting to the table as well. She's, I really love what she's doing to basically stand up for freedom. And that's kind of how I would describe everything you're doing. It's not really under, like you say, in the Greater Reset's not a libertarian or an anarchist thing. To me, it's a freedom thing. And the solutions that you're talking about are leading us towards that direction, in my opinion. So freedom is the umbrella. And I appreciate everything you're doing, man. I appreciate your time. Do you have any final thoughts, anything that you want to add before we do wrap up today?
Well, first, I just want to again say thank you, brother, for the work that you've been doing. I was telling you earlier, I was catching up on some of your recent interviews. And, I also agree that like freedom is the larger umbrella. I spent some time in different movements when I first started, within the umbrella, right? When I first started, and I saw how there's a lot of divisiveness, unfortunately. And there's no time for that right now. Like, yes, we need to stick to our principles. And yes, we absolutely need to be weary of certain people and their associations and what they're bringing to the table. But if you're out there, if you're working on solutions, even if you're working on political solutions, I won't be out there fighting with you in the political realm, but I appreciate that you're doing something. And I would also say that anybody who really does care about the direction that we're going, because I fight for myself, I fight for my nieces and nephews, and I fight for the 7 generations and beyond, those who are coming that we're never going to meet, the people that are going to come after us. We are literally laying the foundation of the world that they're going to exist in. If we do nothing right now, then that world will be 1984. It will be Brave New World. And that might happen either way. But if we do something, then at least there will be an alternative. But if we do nothing, there will be no other alternative. It will just be that. And the people who are coming after us, they will have no idea what it means to be free. They will no idea what it means to hug another human, to understand what it is that we've been fighting for. And I think that each of us can do something to make sure that that never happens, and that there really always remains an alternative to this insanity that we see in the world. So thanks for everything you're doing, brother.
Well, thank you, man. I really appreciate it. That was so well said, and I couldn't agree any more than, with everything you said, man. It's just beautiful. You have, as an activist, journalist, author, public speaker, you definitely have a way with words, and I appreciate that. So the public speaking is definitely something that, you were definitely gifted with, and it's a blessing. So, again, thank you for your time. If you can hold on for me for 1 second, I'm going to wrap up on the video. I'm going to let everybody know again, links are going to be down below for everything we talked about. If you're not already subscribed to my channel, I would encourage you to subscribe. Make sure you follow me on Odyssey and Library, where I have backups of all my videos and post up extra content. I'd encourage you to smash that like button on YouTube. It helps other people to see the information on the YouTube algorithm flow. Same thing with Library and Odyssey. Hit the notification bell, and sometimes YouTube will let you know when those videos come out. If you do it on Odyssey, you'll know every single time. Other than that, I really appreciate everybody for watching, and I always encourage you to be the change by practicing change.